took my daughter to her favorite ice cream shop and saw my wife there with another family, where she was introducing our child as their daughter. 3 weeks ago, I took my 7-year-old daughter Lily for our traditional Saturday ice cream date. We walked into Sweet Dreams Ice Cream, her favorite shop across town, just like we'd done dozens of times before. But this Saturday would forever change our lives in ways I couldn't have imagined. We had just stepped through the door, the familiar bell chiming above us, when I heard a laugh I would recognize anywhere. My wife Sarah's distinctive laugh, the one that had first attracted me to her across a crowded college party 11 years ago. I turned instinctively toward the sound, expecting to see her with a friend or perhaps a work colleague. What I saw instead stopped me cold. Sarah sat at a corner table with a man I'd never seen before and 2 children, a boy who looked about 10 and a girl maybe 12. They were sharing a banana split, all 4 spoons dipping in with the comfortable choreography of a family routine. They were laughing, these strangers and my wife, looking for all the world like a happy family, enjoying a weekend treat. Before I could process what I was seeing, Lily spotted her mother and broke free of my hand. "Mommy! Mommy! We came for ice cream too!" she called, running toward the table. I watched as Sarah's face transformed, joy shifting instantly to shock, then naked panic. She stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair. The man with her looked confused, then concerned as Sarah's expression changed. And then I heard it, the words that made my blood freeze in my veins, as Lily approached their table and the man asked with genuine confusion, "Sarah, who is this?" "This is my daughter, Lily," Sarah said, her voice strained as she darted panicked glances between me and this family she was apparently part of. My daughter, not our daughter, my daughter, as if I didn't exist. Let me rewind and provide some context for the magnitude of this betrayal. Sarah and I met during our junior year of college. I was studying computer science. She was pursuing a business degree with a focus on marketing. We were at opposite ends of the personality spectrum. I was the introverted programmer who preferred small gatherings, while Sarah was outgoing, charismatic, the person who seemed to know everyone on campus. We connected at a mutual friends party where Sarah approached me as I was quietly nursing a beer in the corner, observing more than participating. "You look like you're calculating the optimal escape route," she said, smiling as she leaned against the wall beside me. "That obvious, huh?" I replied, surprised that someone like her would even notice me. "I'm Sarah," she said, offering her hand. "And I've seen you in the library. You're the guy who can type at the speed of light without ever looking at the keyboard." The fact that she had noticed me before this moment was surprising enough to keep me engaged in conversation. What was meant to be a brief exchange turned into hours of talking, discovering unexpected common ground in our love of obscure documentaries, spicy food, and dreams of eventually starting our own businesses. We were married 3 years after graduation, a simple ceremony with close friends and family, and immediately began building our life together. I found success as a software developer, eventually transitioning to a position that allowed me to work remotely most days. Sarah's career in pharmaceutical sales took off after a few years of establishing herself, requiring frequent travel but providing a substantial income that complemented mine nicely. After 4 years of marriage, we decided to try for children. What followed was a devastating journey through infertility that tested our relationship in ways we couldn't have anticipated. Multiple failed IVF attempts, a miscarriage at 14 weeks that left us both emotionally shattered, and the growing tension of monthly disappointments. "Maybe we're not meant to be parents," Sarah suggested after our 3rd failed IVF cycle, her voice hollow with grief. "We can keep trying," I insisted, "or we can look into adoption. There are other paths to parenthood." The strain took its toll. Sarah threw herself into work, volunteering for additional travel assignments that kept her away from home and the constant reminders of our struggle. I buried myself in coding projects, finding solace in problems I could actually solve. When we finally conceived Lily, a last attempt IVF cycle we had almost decided against, it felt like a miracle. The pregnancy was difficult, with Sarah on bed rest for the final 2 months, but when our daughter arrived, healthy and perfect, The years of heartbreak seemed worth every moment. "She's everything I never knew I could have," Sarah whispered, holding our newborn daughter while tears streamed down her face. "Thank you for not giving up." The early years of parenthood brought us closer again. We traded midnight feedings, celebrated first steps, documented every milestone with hundreds of photos. Sarah adjusted her work schedule to minimize overnight travel, and I arranged my remote work hours to maximize family time. As Lily grew, we established family traditions: Sunday morning pancakes, summer camping trips, and our Saturday ice cream dates, which were initially a family activity. When Sarah's travel schedule increased 2 years ago, following a significant promotion, these ice cream outings became special father-daughter time, a way for Lily and me to bond while Sarah was away. "You two need your own traditions," Sarah had said encouragingly when the promotion was offered, "and Sweet Dreams makes the best ice cream in 3 counties. It's worth the drive." Sweet Dreams was located about 30 minutes from our home, making it a special destination rather than a casual stop. Sarah occasionally joined us when she wasn't traveling, but mostly it became our thing, mine and Lily's. The promotion that increased Sarah's travel was a significant career advancement. Regional sales director for her pharmaceutical company, overseeing teams across several states. It meant more responsibility, more travel, typically 2 to 3 nights per week, and a substantial salary increase that allowed us to move from our starter home to a spacious craftsman-style house in a neighborhood with excellent schools. I fully supported this career move, taking on more parenting duties and household responsibilities to accommodate her new role. We adjusted our family routines, with me handling most school drop-offs and pickups, while Sarah made sure to be present for important events and weekends when possible. On paper, we had achieved the life we had planned together: successful careers, financial stability, a beautiful home, and the daughter we had fought so hard to bring into the world. Sarah and I were a team, partners navigating the complexities of dual careers and parenthood with mutual support and respect. Or so I believed. Looking back, there were subtle shifts I might have noticed had I been more attuned to the possibility of deception. But why would I suspect anything? Our relationship had weathered significant challenges. The infertility struggle alone would have broken many couples, and emerged stronger. We communicated regularly, maintained intimacy despite her travel schedule, and focused on quality family time when we were all together. The first change came about 2 years ago, coinciding with Sarah's promotion. Her travel increased as expected, but there were new patterns. Whereas previously she would call every night when away, video chatting so Lily could say goodnight, these calls became less consistent. Back-to-back meetings or client dinners running late were the usual explanations. "I miss our calls," I mentioned one weekend after she returned from a trip. "So does Lily." "I know, and I'm sorry," Sarah replied, looking genuinely regretful. "This new position is more demanding than I expected. The regional teams need a lot of hands-on guidance." I accepted this explanation without question. Why wouldn't I? Sarah had always been dedicated to her career, and the transition to a leadership role naturally came with adjustment challenges. Another subtle change involved her phone. Sarah had always been casual with her device, leaving it on tables, sharing funny texts or emails from colleagues, using my fingerprint to unlock it when her hands were full. Gradually, this openness disappeared. Her phone was always with her, always face down when not in use, and she had removed my fingerprint access during a security update. "They're implementing stricter HIPAA compliance protocols," she explained when I noticed the change. "No shared access, even with spouses." Again, a reasonable explanation that I had no reason to question. Perhaps the most significant shift was in our family calendar management. Sarah had always handled our shared digital calendar, coordinating her work trips with my occasional on-site meetings and Lily's school events. About 18 months ago, she suggested a change. "It's getting complicated tracking everything across multiple calendars," she said. "What if we simplify? I'll keep managing the master calendar and just send you calendar invites for anything that affects your schedule." This seemed efficient, and I agreed without hesitation. The result, was that I no longer had visibility into her complete schedule, only the events she chose to share with me. It was a change that would prove crucial to her ability to maintain a double life. There were other small things, weekend training conferences that hadn't been part of her previous role, sudden schedule changes requiring her to leave earlier or return later than planned, an increasing number of girls' nights with colleagues when she was in town. None of these alone raised any alarms. Aggregated in hindsight, they were the infrastructure of deception. Sarah was still attentive when home, still engaged with Lily, still affectionate with me. We still had date nights, still discussed future plans, still maintained the intimate moments that define a marriage. If our connection had fractured, obviously, perhaps I would have questioned more. Instead, the changes were incremental, each explicable on its own, the cumulative effect obscured by my fundamental trust in our partnership. I never imagined that my wife, who had wept in my arms through years of fertility treatments, who had held our newborn daughter with such transcendent joy, could be systematically constructing a parallel life that included our child, but excluded me. That Saturday had begun like any other father-daughter day. Lily had aced her spelling test that week, bringing home a perfect score that now occupied pride of place on our refrigerator. I had promised her a special treat, 2 scoops instead of her usual one at Sweet Dreams ice cream. "With sprinkles?" she had asked, eyes wide with excitement. "With sprinkles and whipped cream," I confirmed, enjoying her exuberance over such a simple pleasure. We made the 30-minute drive listening to her favorite playlist, an eclectic mix of Disney songs and whatever pop music was currently popular with the second-grade set. Lily chattered about school projects, playground politics, and her upcoming soccer game, while I made appropriately interested responses at all the right moments. Sweet Dreams was busier than usual when we arrived, the spring weather having drawn more customers than the typical February weekend. We joined the line, Lily bouncing slightly with anticipation as she peered at the flavor options displayed on the wall. "I think I want chocolate chip and strawberry," she announced after careful consideration. "With rainbow sprinkles?" "Excellent choice," I replied, scanning the crowd for an empty table we could claim while waiting our turn. That's when I heard Sarah's laugh, distinctive and familiar, a sound that normally brought me comfort but in this context caused immediate confusion. My eyes found her automatically, drawn to the source of that familiar sound. She sat in the corner booth, partially obscured by a large fake potted plant that divided sections of the ice cream parlor. With her were 3 people I had never seen before, a man approximately my age and 2 children. They were sharing what appeared to be a banana split, all 4 spoons diving in with comfortable familiarity. My first thought was benign. Sarah must have returned early from her Philadelphia conference and run into someone she knew, perhaps a client with their family. But even as this rational explanation formed, something felt wrong. The body language was too intimate, too familiar for a business acquaintance. Before I could process further, Lily spotted her mother. "Daddy, look, Mommy's here!" she exclaimed, pointing excitedly. "I see her," I managed, still trying to understand what I was witnessing. "Can we go say hi?" Lily asked, already tugging my hand in that direction. "Let's wait until we order," I suggested, suddenly needing a moment to observe before approaching. But Lily, with a child's natural exuberance and lack of patience, broke free of my grip and darted toward her mother. "Mommy! Mommy! We came for ice cream too!" I watched as Sarah's head turned toward Lily's voice, her expression transforming from relaxed happiness to shock in an instant. She stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her chair, her face draining of color as she spotted me still standing in line. The man with her looked confused, then concerned, saying something I couldn't hear from this distance. The children at the table looked equally bewildered, staring at Lily with curious expressions. I moved toward them as if in a dream, my body operating on autopilot while my mind struggled to process what was unfolding. As I approached, I heard the man's question that would change everything. "Sarah, who is this?" he asked, looking at Lily with genuine confusion. "This is my daughter, Lily," Sarah replied, her voice tight as she glanced nervously between me and this man. "My daughter, not our daughter, my daughter." "And this is," the man continued, looking at me with growing wariness. Sarah's pause was brief but noticeable. "This is Eric," she said finally, "Lily's father." The man's expression shifted from confusion to something harder. "Lily's father?" he repeated, his gaze moving from me to Sarah. "I thought you said he was barely in the picture except for scheduled visitation?" The ground seemed to tilt beneath me as his words registered. Sarah had not only established a relationship with this man and his children, she had presented herself as a single mother with limited co-parenting involvement from me. "David, this isn't," Sarah started, then stopped, evidently realizing there was no easy way to explain the situation. Lily, sensing the tension, but not understanding it, clutched my leg. "Daddy, why is Mommy here? I thought she was in Philadelphia," I supplied automatically, the parental reflex to help with difficult words operating even as my world collapsed. "So did I, sweetheart." David's face hardened as understanding dawned. "You're not divorced, are you?" he asked Sarah directly. Sarah's silence was confirmation enough. "Eric," she finally said, turning to me, "this isn't the place." "Not the place to discover my wife has a second family?" I interrupted, keeping my voice low but intense. "Where would be the appropriate venue for that, Sarah?" The two children at the table looked increasingly uncomfortable. The boy, who appeared to be around 10, leaned toward the girl, his sister, I presumed, and whispered something. She nodded, her eyes wide as she observed the adult drama unfolding. "Lily," I said, making a supreme effort to keep my voice gentle and calm, "why don't you go pick out your ice cream? I need to talk to Mommy for a minute." "But we were already waiting in line," she protested, confused by the deviation from our routine. "I know, but I'll come join you in a minute. 2 scoops with sprinkles and whipped cream, remember?" She nodded reluctantly and moved back toward the counter, though she kept glancing over her shoulder at us. Once Lily was out of immediate earshot, I turned back to Sarah and David. "How long has this been going on?" I asked, my voice remarkably steady considering the circumstances. "Eric, please, we can discuss this at home," Sarah began. "How long?" Each word came out like a separate sentence. "We met at a regional conference 2 years ago," David answered when Sarah remained silent. "Sarah told me she was divorced with shared custody of her daughter." 2 years. The timeline aligned perfectly with Sarah's promotion and increased travel, the career advancement I had supported so enthusiastically, taking on additional parenting responsibilities to facilitate her success, all while she was constructing an entire parallel life. "And your children?" I asked, looking at the clearly distressed kids at the table. "My children from my previous marriage," David confirmed, his voice hardening as he turned to Sarah. "My actual previous marriage, which ended in an actual divorce, unlike whatever this situation is." Sarah looked trapped between 2 collapsing worlds. "I can explain," she began, the phrase sounding as hollow as it always does in these situations. "To both of us, apparently," I replied, "but not here, not in front of the children." I gestured toward Lily, who was now at the counter with a teenage server, pointing at ice cream flavors but continually looking back at our tense gathering. "I need to take care of my daughter," I said, emphasis on the possessive. "I suggest you figure out what you're going to tell yours," I added to David, nodding toward his children. As I turned to walk away, David called after me. "For what it's worth, I had no idea you existed." "Not really. She said there was an ex-husband who was rarely involved." I nodded acknowledgement without turning back. In that moment, I recognized that David was as much a victim of Sarah's deception as I was, albeit in different ways. I joined Lily at the counter, summoning every ounce of parental self-control to maintain a facade of normalcy. "Did you decide on your flavors?" "Chocolate chip and strawberry," she confirmed, seemingly relieved to return to the familiar script of our ice cream outings despite the underlying tension she clearly sensed. Excellent choice, I said, ordering her selection and a single scoop of vanilla for myself that I knew I wouldn't eat. As we waited for our order, I glanced back at the corner table. David was gathering his children, speaking to them in low tones while Sarah stood by, looking shell-shocked. As they prepared to leave, I heard David say to Sarah, "I think you should leave, now. We'll discuss this later." Our ice cream arrived, and I guided Lily to a table on the opposite side of the shop. Sarah hesitated, then approached us tentatively. "Eric," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "please let me explain." "Not now," I replied firmly, nodding toward Lily, who was happily applying sprinkles to her ice cream, seemingly oblivious to the adult catastrophe unfolding around her. "When will you be home?" Sarah asked, a question that seemed absurdly mundane given the circumstances. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but I suggest you use the time to think very carefully about what you plan to say, not just to me, but to our daughter." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She reached toward Lily, who looked up with a smile that faded as she registered her mother's distress. "Mommy, why are you crying?" Lily asked, ice cream momentarily forgotten. "Mommy's just having a grown-up problem," Sarah replied, attempting a reassuring smile that came nowhere close to her eyes. "Enjoy your ice cream with Daddy. I'll see you at home later, okay?" Lily nodded uncertainly, looking between us with the perceptiveness children often display at the most inconvenient moments. Sarah left without another word, and I was left sitting across from my daughter, watching her eat ice cream while trying to process the fact that my marriage was built on an elaborate foundation of lies. The drive home was excruciating. Lily, sensing something was terribly wrong but not understanding what, asked increasingly difficult questions. Why was Mommy with those people? Why did she look scared to see us? Why did she leave without having ice cream with us? I answered as honestly as I could without burdening her with adult problems. Mommy ran into some people she knows, and they were having a grown-up discussion that made her upset. She'll be home later, and we'll figure everything out. These vague explanations didn't satisfy Lily, but eventually she turned her attention to the passing scenery, occasionally offering observations about dogs in other cars or interesting buildings we passed. I responded automatically, my mind racing with questions, revelations, and the growing realization that my life was fundamentally different than it had been 3 hours earlier. When we arrived home, Sarah's car wasn't in the driveway. I helped Lily change into play clothes and set her up with her favorite cartoon while I sat at the kitchen table, trying to decide what to do next. My instinct was to call someone, my brother perhaps, or my closest friend, but I couldn't bring myself to speak the truth aloud yet. Saying it would make it real in a way I wasn't prepared to face. Instead, I texted Sarah, "Where are you?" Her response came immediately. "With David, trying to explain. I'll be home in an hour. Please be there." The audacity of her request that I be there when she returned from meeting with her other, partner? Boyfriend? The man she had apparently been presenting herself to as a single mother? It was almost laughable. "I'm not going anywhere," I replied. "Lily and I are home." The hour passed with excruciating slowness. I occupied myself with straightening the kitchen, helping Lily with a simple craft project, and obsessively checking my phone, though for what I wasn't sure. More revelations? Explanations? There was nothing anyone could tell me via text that would make sense of what I had witnessed. Sarah arrived home 6 hours after the ice cream shop encounter, far beyond her promised hour. Her eyes were red from crying, her normally immaculate appearance disheveled. She stood in the entryway of our home, a home we had chosen together, renovated together, filled with memories together, looking like a stranger. "Where's Lily?" she asked quietly. "In her room with her iPad and headphones," I replied. Something we rarely allow, but I figured we needed privacy for this conversation. Sarah nodded, moving tentatively toward the kitchen table where I sat waiting. She placed her purse on the counter with deliberate care, a mundane action that seemed absurd given the circumstances. "I don't even know where to begin," she said finally, sinking into the chair across from me. The beginning would be traditional, I replied, surprised by the icy calm in my voice. 2 years ago, at a regional conference, apparently. She flinched slightly. Yes, I met David at a pharmaceutical conference in Dallas. He's in medical device sales, so our paths cross at these industry events. And you told him you were divorced, I prompted when she paused. Not immediately, she said, as if this mitigated anything. At first, we were just professional contacts, then friends. It evolved gradually. Into you presenting yourself as a single mother and our daughter as having only limited contact with her father? The words felt bitter in my mouth. Sarah closed her eyes briefly. It wasn't planned, Eric. The first time we met outside a professional context, he assumed I was single because I wasn't wearing my ring. You remove your wedding ring during conferences? This detail somehow cut deeper than I expected. For years, she admitted softly. The industry is still very male-dominated. It's easier sometimes if they don't immediately categorize you as someone's wife. The explanation rang hollow. She had never mentioned this practice before, and it seemed a flimsy justification for removing a symbol of our commitment. So David assumed you were single, and rather than correct this misunderstanding, you... What? Decided to create an entire fictional life where I barely existed? It wasn't like that, not at first. Sarah leaned forward, her hands clasped tightly together on the table. We were just colleagues getting dinner. He mentioned being divorced with 2 kids, and I talked about Lily. He assumed I was a single parent too, and I didn't correct him. Why not? The question came out quietly, but with an intensity that made her flinch. Because talking to him was easy, she replied after a moment. Being with him was simple in a way that our life hasn't been for a long time. Our life raising the daughter we fought years to conceive, our life in the home we carefully chose for its school district, that difficult life? My voice remained low, but each word felt edged with ice. You don't understand, Eric. After everything with the infertility treatments and the miscarriage, then finally having Lily, it changed me, changed us. We became parents first and partners second. Sometimes I felt like we were just co-managers of a household rather than husband and wife. I stared at her, trying to reconcile this narrative with my experience of our marriage. Had we focused intensely on parenthood? Of course. Having a child after years of heartbreak made Lily precious beyond measure. But we had maintained date nights, physical intimacy, conversations about things beyond parenting. Or at least I thought we had. So rather than talk to me about these feelings, you created a fictional version of our family where I was essentially erased, started a relationship with another man, and involved our daughter in this deception? I never meant for any of this to happen, she said, the classic defense of the indefensible. What started as a simple omission grew into something I couldn't easily correct. By the time I realized how deep I was, it seemed impossible to tell the truth to either of you. As our conversation continued, more details emerged, each more devastating than the last. Sarah had been living a meticulously constructed double life, with elaborate systems to keep her 2 worlds separate. The business trips were often days spent with David and his children. The Philadelphia conference she was supposedly attending this weekend was actually a planned trip to a water park resort with David's family, a surprise for his kids that had included our daughter. You were taking Lily to a water park with them? I asked, horrified at the brazenness. How were you planning to explain her absence? I told you last month she had been invited to Emma's family lake house this weekend, Sarah replied, referencing Lily's best friend. You said it sounded like fun. I remembered the conversation, Sarah mentioning casually that Emma's family had invited Lily for a weekend getaway. I had agreed without hesitation, happy that Lily would have such an opportunity. Now I wondered if Emma's family had ever extended such an invitation or if this was entirely fabricated. Does Emma's family know about this? Were they supposed to provide your alibi if I called checking on Lily? Sarah looked away. They think Lily is spending the weekend with my mother. the layers of deception were dizzying. She had created a circular system of false covers, each providing backup for the other. If I had called Emma's family, they would have been confused but might have assumed miscommunication. If they mentioned Lily was supposedly with her grandmother, Sarah could claim confusion about the dates. "How many times have you done this?" I asked. "Taken Lily to spend time with them under false pretenses?" "A few day trips," she admitted. 3 overnight visits in the past year." "And how did you explain me to Lily during these trips? How did you justify why her father wasn't included?" Sarah's silence was damning. "You told her I was busy with work, didn't you? Made me the absent parent in her eyes while you played happy family with David and his children." "I didn't disparage you," Sarah insisted, though her voice lacked conviction. "I just simplified the arrangement when we were with them." "Simplified?" I repeated incredulously. "You erased me from my daughter's life whenever it was convenient for your deception. What does Lily think is happening during these trips? Does she understand she's supposed to pretend I don't exist?" "She's 7, Eric. She doesn't analyze these situations the way adults do. She just accepts that sometimes she spends time with me and my friends." "Your friends?" I echoed hollowly. "Is that how you've characterized David and his children to her? Just friends?" Sarah hesitated. "Initially, yes. But as time went on, David's children started referring to me as their dad's girlfriend. It became complicated to maintain different narratives for different audiences." "So our daughter knows you're in a romantic relationship with another man, while still married to me?" "Not in those terms," Sarah insisted. "She just knows that David is special to me, like a close friend." The thought of my child being manipulated into participating in this deception, however innocently, filled me with a cold rage I had never experienced before. "What about David's children? What do they think about your relationship with their father?" "They've been accepting," Sarah said. "Charlotte is 12 and Michael is 10. They lost their mother to divorce 3 years ago, and they've been open to having a maternal figure in their lives again." "A maternal figure," I repeated. "And that's the role you've been playing? Surrogate mother to his children while remaining actually married to me?" Sarah had no adequate response to this. As our conversation continued into the night, more appalling details emerged. Sarah had rented a small apartment in the town where David lived, about an hour away, that she presented as her place when she had custody of her daughter. She maintained separate social media profiles under her maiden name, careful to never post photos showing Lily in contexts that might reveal our intact family. Most disturbingly, she had been preparing Lily for a transition where we would live in different houses soon, laying groundwork for a fictional separation that would make her narrative with David consistent. "Were you planning to divorce me?" I asked directly, "or just continue this double life indefinitely?" "I don't know," she admitted, and the honesty in this statement was perhaps the most devastating part. "I've been trying to figure out what to do for months. I care about David and his children, but I also didn't want to destroy our family." "Our family was destroyed the moment you decided to create a second one," I replied. "You just didn't bother to inform me." Around midnight, emotionally exhausted but needing practical clarity, I asked the question that had been building throughout our conversation. "What happens now, Sarah?" She looked genuinely lost. "I don't know. David knows everything now. He's understandably angry and feels betrayed. He said he needs time to think about whether he can ever trust me again." "That makes 2 of us," I said quietly. "I never meant to hurt either of you," she insisted. "I just got caught in a situation that spiraled beyond my control." "No," I corrected firmly. "You made specific choices, thousands of them, every day for 2 years. Each lie was a choice. Each deception was deliberate. This wasn't something that happened to you. It was something you actively created and maintained." We sat in silence for several long moments, the reality of our situation settling heavily between us. "I think you should sleep in the guest room tonight," I finally said. "Tomorrow we need to figure out how to talk to Lily about what's happening." Sarah nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'm so sorry, Eric. I know that doesn't change anything, but I am truly sorry for the pain I've caused. As she stood to leave the kitchen, I asked one final question. If we hadn't walked into that ice cream shop today, how long would this have continued? Her hesitation before responding told me everything I needed to know. The hardest conversation wasn't with Sarah, it was with Lily. Sunday morning arrived with the surreal quality that follows life-altering revelations. I had barely slept, spending most of the night staring at the ceiling, replaying years of memories with new context. Sarah appeared equally exhausted when she emerged from the guest room, her normally confident posture diminished, her eyes swollen from crying. We agreed to maintain as much normalcy as possible for Lily's sake while we figured out our next steps. This meant our traditional Sunday pancake breakfast continued, though the usual comfortable chatter was replaced by strained small talk and careful avoidance of anything related to yesterday's discovery. Lily, perceptive as always, immediately sensed the tension. "Why did Mommy sleep in the guest room?" she asked directly as I served her blueberry pancakes. Sarah and I exchanged glances. We had agreed to have a proper conversation with her after breakfast, but Lily, as usual, was operating on her own timeline. "Mommy and I need to talk to you about some grown-up things," I began carefully. "But let's eat breakfast first, okay?" "Is it about the people at the ice cream shop?" Lily pressed, ignoring my suggestion to postpone the conversation. "The man and the kids that Mommy knows?" I sighed, recognizing the futility of delay. "Yes, sweetheart, it is about them." Sarah reached for Lily's hand across the table. "Those people are friends of mine. The man's name is David, and his children are Charlotte and Michael." "Why didn't you tell us you were meeting them for ice cream?" Lily asked, her direct question cutting to the heart of the matter in the way only children can. "That's part of what we need to talk about," Sarah replied, looking to me for support. "I haven't been completely honest about some things, and that was wrong of me." We moved to the living room after breakfast, sitting together on the sofa with Lily between us. With age-appropriate simplicity, we explained that Mommy and Daddy were having problems in our relationship and would be living separately for a while. "Like Emma's parents?" Lily asked, referencing her friend whose parents had divorced 2 years earlier. "Similar to that," I acknowledged, "but every family situation is different." "Is it because of David?" Lily asked, again displaying that unnerving perceptiveness. Sarah took a deep breath. "It's complicated, sweetheart. Mommy made some mistakes and wasn't honest with Daddy, and that hurt his feelings very much." "Did you lie?" Lily pressed, applying her second-grade moral framework to the situation. "Mrs. Garcia says lying breaks trust, and broken trust is hard to fix." "Yes," Sarah admitted, her voice cracking slightly. "Mommy did lie, and that was very wrong." "About David and Charlotte and Michael," Lily continued her cross-examination. Sarah nodded, tears forming. "Yes, I should have been honest with Daddy about my friendship with them." I noted Sarah's use of friendship rather than revealing the romantic nature of her relationship with David, but let it pass. There would be time for more complete explanations as Lily processed this initial information. "Where will I live?" Lily asked, moving quickly to the practical concerns that occupied her 7-year-old mind. "You'll live in this house," I assured her, "but you'll spend time with both Mommy and Daddy, just not at the same time for a while." As our conversation continued, we answered Lily's questions as honestly as we could while shielding her from unnecessary details. She expressed worry, confusion, and occasional flashes of anger, particularly directed at Sarah. "Why did you lie?" she demanded at one point. "Don't you love Daddy anymore?" "It's not about not loving Daddy," Sarah tried to explain. "Sometimes grown-ups make complicated mistakes that hurt people they care about." "That's not a real answer," Lily observed accurately, crossing her arms in frustration. The conversation was painful but necessary, establishing a foundation of honesty, ironically, through the dissolution of a relationship built on deception. We assured Lily repeatedly that none of this was her fault, that both of us would always love her, and that we would make sure she felt secure through whatever changes came next. After our discussion with Lily, she retreated to her room, asking for time to play with her stuffed animals alone, her typical method of processing difficult emotions. Sarah and I returned to the kitchen to discuss practical next steps. "I think I should find an apartment," Sarah said quietly. "Give you and Lily some space while we figure things out." I nodded, still too emotionally raw to feel anything but relief at the prospect of not having to see Sarah daily. "That seems reasonable. What about David?" Sarah looked down at her hands. "He's still processing everything. His children are upset and confused. He said he needs time before deciding whether there's any future for us." "And do you want a future with him?" I asked, needing to understand where her priorities lay for the purposes of planning. "I don't know," she admitted. "Yesterday I would have said yes. Today everything feels broken beyond repair, with both of you." In the days that followed, more revelations emerged as Sarah moved to a short-term rental, and we began the logistical process of separation. Financial disclosures revealed a secret credit card I had no knowledge of, used primarily for expenses related to her double life: the apartment rental, gifts for David and his children, meals and activities during their outings. Sarah had also been siphoning small amounts from our joint savings account to a private account, not enough to immediately notice, but cumulatively significant over 2 years. When confronted, she admitted this was her contingency fund for when her dual lives inevitably collided. "You were preparing for this," I realized during one particularly difficult conversation. "You knew it would all come crashing down eventually." "I think I always knew it was unsustainable," she acknowledged, "but I couldn't see a way out that didn't destroy everything." The most painful discovery came when I found Sarah's private email account, which she had accessed on our home computer. The correspondence between her and David revealed the depth of their relationship and the extent of her deception to both of us. In emails to David, she had described me as controlling and emotionally distant, claiming I was obsessively focused on work to the exclusion of family. She portrayed herself as essentially a single parent who remained in a loveless marriage primarily for Lily's stability. Reading these characterizations, so completely at odds with the reality of our relationship, was like discovering yet another betrayal. Not only had Sarah created a fictional version of our family structure, but she had vilified me to justify her deception. When confronted with these emails, Sarah broke down. "I had to make sense of what I was doing," she said through tears. "I couldn't bear to think of myself as someone who would betray a loving husband for no reason. So I exaggerated issues between us to justify my choices." "You didn't just betray me," I pointed out. "You betrayed David too, and Lily, and his children. Everyone involved in this situation was manipulated to serve your narrative." She had no response to this, the magnitude of her deceptions finally seeming to register fully. I filed for divorce within a week, requesting primary custody based on Sarah's pattern of deception and the potential psychological harm to Lily of continued exposure to such elaborate lies. Given the overwhelming evidence of her double life, Sarah didn't contest either the divorce or the custody arrangement, perhaps recognizing the indefensibility of her actions. Telling our extended families about the separation was another layer of pain. My parents were understandably shocked and angry on my behalf. Sarah's parents seemed bewildered by their daughter's actions, her mother confiding that Sarah had occasionally mentioned David as a work friend, but had given no indication of the true nature of their relationship. Friends divided themselves naturally, some rallying around me with support and practical help, others distancing themselves from the uncomfortable reality of choosing sides. A few admitted they had observed Sarah and David together in public, but had assumed he was a colleague or client, never suspecting the depth of deception involved. Most painfully, 3 of Lily's friends' parents revealed that they had been unwitting accomplices in Sarah's deception. On multiple occasions, she had claimed Lily was having playdates with their children to cover for outings with David's family. These parents were horrified to learn they had been used in this way, their ignorance enabling Sarah's elaborate lie. 2 weeks after the ice cream shop discovery, I received an unexpected email from David. He suggested meeting for coffee, explaining that he felt we should talk directly, rather than continuing to piece together the truth through Sarah's unreliable narratives. We met at a neutral location, two men connected by the woman who had deceived us both. The conversation was awkward initially, but evolved into a surprisingly honest exchange about our experiences. "I wanted to apologize," David began after we had settled with our coffees. "Not for the relationship itself. I genuinely had no idea you existed as anything other than an uninvolved ex-husband, but for the role I unknowingly played in hurting your family." "I appreciate that," I replied, finding I harbored no resentment toward this man who had been manipulated as thoroughly as I had been. "How are your children handling all this?" David sighed heavily. "Charlotte is old enough to understand the concept of being lied to, and she's taking it hard. She had really bonded with Sarah, started seeing her as a potential stepmother figure. Michael is confused but adapting better. What about Lily?" I explained Lily's conflicted emotions, her anger at her mother's dishonesty, her confusion about the status of our family, her uncertainty about what her relationship with David and his children was supposed to be now. "My therapist says the most damaging aspect for children in situations like this isn't the family reconfiguration itself, but the dishonesty surrounding it," I shared. "Kids can adapt to almost any family structure if it's presented honestly and consistently." "That makes sense," David nodded. "My first concern is protecting my kids from further harm, but I'm also trying to figure out if there's anything salvageable with Sarah." This surprised me. "You're considering continuing the relationship?" He looked conflicted. "I don't know. On one hand, the foundation was built entirely on lies. On the other hand, the connection itself felt genuine, despite the fictional context. It's complicated." "It is," I agreed, understanding his ambivalence despite my own certainty that my marriage was irreparably broken. Before we parted, David shared information that confirmed another suspicion. Sarah had been planning to ask for a divorce this summer, timing it to minimally disrupt Lily's school year while allowing her relationship with David to transition to something more public. "She talked about us being a blended family by Christmas," he said quietly. "All 5 of us together for the holidays. She seemed to genuinely believe that was possible." The revelation that Sarah had been actively planning our family's dissolution while maintaining our outward appearance of marital harmony was the final confirmation I needed that moving forward with divorce was the right decision. In the months that followed, we established a new normal that none of us had chosen, but all were adapting to with varying degrees of success. Sarah found a permanent apartment equidistant between our home and David's, though their relationship status remained complicated according to Lily's reports following visitation. Lily began seeing a child psychologist specializing in family transitions, who helped her process her feelings about the sudden changes in her life. The therapist reported that Lily was adjusting remarkably well given the circumstances, but cautioned that trust issues might emerge as she grew older and fully comprehended the extent of her mother's deception. "The most important thing you can provide now is absolute consistency and honesty," Dr. Mercer advised during one of our parent consultations. "Children who experience betrayal by a primary caregiver often develop hypervigilance about being lied to. Your transparency will be crucial to her sense of security moving forward." I took this guidance seriously, answering Lily's questions truthfully but age-appropriately, even when the answers were uncomfortable. When she asked if Mommy had loved David more than she loved us, I replied carefully, "Mommy's choices weren't about loving one person more than another. Adults sometimes make complicated mistakes when they're confused about what they want in life." 6 months after that fateful day at Sweet Dreams Ice Cream, our divorce was finalized. Sarah received standard visitation rights, with additional provisions requiring transparency about who would be present during her parenting time, a direct response to her history of deceiving Lily about their activities and companions. Against all expectations, David and Sarah eventually resumed their relationship, though with significantly adjusted expectations and boundaries. According to Sarah, they were in couples therapy working through the trust issues created by her deception. Their relationship now existed in the open, with all children aware of the actual circumstances connecting their families. Rebuilding and reflections. It's been 10 months since the ice cream shop revelation that transformed our lives. In that time, I've experienced the full spectrum of emotions, from rage to grief to eventual acceptance of our new reality. The hardest adjustment has been witnessing Lily develop a relationship with David and his children under Sarah's supervision. The first time she came home from a weekend visitation talking excitedly about Charlotte teaching me to make friendship bracelets and Michael showing me his video game, I felt a complicated mix of emotions: gratitude that her experiences were positive, jealousy that others were forming bonds with my child, and lingering anger that this situation existed at all. My therapist helped me process these feelings without transferring them to Lily. Children benefit from having multiple positive adult influences, Dr. Bennett reminded me. David's presence in Lily's life doesn't diminish your role as her father. It's not a zero-sum equation. Gradually, I came to see that Lily's expanding circle of caring relationships wasn't a threat, but a benefit, as long as those relationships were now built on honesty rather than deception. My own healing process has been neither linear nor simple. There are still days when a memory will surface, Sarah and I planning our future together while she was simultaneously building a separate life, or Lily innocently mentioning something that reveals another instance of manipulation I hadn't previously known about, and the anger feels fresh again. But there are also days of surprising peace, of recognition that while I couldn't control Sarah's choices, I can control how I respond to them and how I protect our daughter going forward. One unexpected development has been the community that formed around us during this crisis. My brother Colin became a more consistent presence in Lily's life, providing male mentorship and stability when I needed support. Neighbors organized meal trains during the initial weeks when basic self-care felt beyond my capacity. Lily's school counselor proactively checked in, creating a safe space for her to process her feelings outside our home. Professionally, I threw myself into work initially as an escape, then increasingly as a source of satisfaction and growth. 6 months after the separation, I accepted a promotion that had been in discussion before our family imploded. A role with greater responsibility, but also more flexibility to structure my schedule around Lily's needs. Dating remains theoretical rather than practical at this point. Friends have gently suggested I get back out there, but the thought of trusting another person with my heart feels premature. My therapist assures me this hesitation is both normal and healthy, a sign of appropriate caution rather than pathological fear. Trauma fundamentally changes our sense of safety in the world, Dr. Bennett explained. The timeline for rebuilding that sense of security is highly individual. There's no schedule you're supposed to follow. The most significant growth has been in my relationship with Lily. Without Sarah as a buffer or intermediary, I've developed new dimensions of connection with my daughter, learning to braid her hair for school, thanks to YouTube tutorials, discovering her preference for hiking over team sports, finding our own traditions that belong just to us. One Sunday morning, as Lily and I made pancakes together, continuing the tradition but making it our own with chocolate chips arranged in smile patterns, she asked a question that caught me off guard. "Daddy, are you still mad at Mommy?" I considered my answer carefully, knowing her 7-year-old perception would interpret any criticism of Sarah as a criticism of half her genetic identity. I was very angry at first, I acknowledged honestly. When people we trust break that trust, it hurts deeply. I'm less angry now, but I'm still sad about what happened. She nodded, seemingly satisfied with this answer. Then, with that direct perception children often display, "But you're happier now, aren't you? Even though you're sad sometimes." The observation startled me with its accuracy. Despite everything, there was a fundamental lightness to life without constant deception, even deception I hadn't been aware of at the time. "I think you're right," I told her. "How about you? Are you happy with how things are now?" She considered this with adorable seriousness, spatula in hand as she flipped a pancake. Sometimes I wish we all lived together like before, but I don't like secrets and lying, and I like that you smile more now. Out of the mouths of babes, as they say. Sarah and I have established a functional co-parenting relationship that prioritizes Lily's well-being above our personal feelings. Our communication is primarily focused on logistics and Lily's needs, conducted through a co-parenting app that maintains records of all exchanges, a recommendation from my attorney given Sarah's history of manipulating narratives. 6 months after our separation, Sarah approached me with an unexpected request. She wanted to apologize formally, with her therapist present, for the damage her deception had caused. I agreed, more out of curiosity than any expectation of healing. The conversation was surprisingly meaningful. With her therapist facilitating, Sarah articulated genuine responsibility for her actions without deflection or justification. She acknowledged the psychological harm she had caused to everyone involved, and expressed understanding that forgiveness might never be possible. "I don't expect this to change anything between us," she concluded, "but I wanted you to know that I'm doing the work to understand why I was capable of such sustained deception, and to ensure I never repeat these patterns." I thanked her for the apology, but made no promises about forgiveness. Some breaches of trust are too fundamental to simply move past. However, I did acknowledge that her commitment to therapy and self-examination would benefit Lily, which was ultimately what mattered most to both of us. As for David and his children, we have established a cautious but civil relationship based on our shared concern for the children caught in this adult chaos. We occasionally coordinate birthdays and school events to minimize awkwardness, always with Lily's comfort as the priority. The man who walked into that ice cream shop 10 months ago no longer exists. He died the moment he saw his wife playing happy family with another man and his children. The man who emerged from that experience is more cautious, but also more authentic, more attentive to subtle dynamics in relationships, more appreciative of honest communication even when difficult. The most important lesson I've learned is that while deception destroys, truth, even painful truth, ultimately heals. By maintaining honesty with Lily, with myself, and with others in our reconfigured lives, we've created a foundation for genuine connection that no longer depends on carefully maintained illusions. Last week, Lily and I returned to Sweet Dreams ice cream for the first time since the discovery. It was her idea, a casual suggestion that revealed how far we've come in processing the trauma of that day. "Can we go to the ice cream place?" she asked on Saturday morning. "The one with the rainbow sprinkles?" I hesitated, memories of that devastating day flashing through my mind. "Are you sure? We can find another ice cream shop if you prefer." She shook her head decisively. "I want to go there. It has the best strawberry. And besides," she added with the resilience only children seem capable of, "it's just an ice cream shop. The bad stuff that happened wasn't the ice cream's fault." Out of the mouths of babes, indeed. TLDR. While taking my 7-year-old daughter for ice cream, I discovered my wife with another man and his children, a family she had been secretly building for 2 years while presenting herself as a single mother with limited involvement from me. Filed for divorce, obtained primary custody, and am rebuilding a life based on honesty rather than deception. Edit 1. Many of you have asked about potential legal action beyond divorce. My attorney has advised that while Sarah's behavior was deeply unethical, it doesn't rise to the level of criminal action in our state. My focus is protecting Lily, not punishing Sarah. Edit 2. To those suggesting I should prevent Sarah from seeing Lily at all, despite everything, she's still Lily's mother. The psychologist has advised that supervised visitation is important for Lily's long-term emotional health, provided Sarah commits to therapy and maintains appropriate boundaries. Edit 3. Thank you all for the overwhelming support and advice. This community has been an unexpected source of strength during the darkest period of my life. Special thanks to those who shared resources for single fathers. They've been invaluable as I navigate this new territory. Update, 6 months later. Several people have asked for an update, so here goes. Lily continues to adjust well with the help of therapy. Sarah and David are still together, though there have been significant trust issues, according to Lily. I've started dating very casually, just coffee meetings so far, nothing I've introduced to Lily. Most importantly, I've found unexpected joy in our new life. It's different than what I planned, but watching Lily thrive despite everything has been the greatest reward. Trust your instincts, document everything, and remember that children are remarkably resilient when surrounded by honesty and love.